The reality is sustainability is not going away. The physical demands of the world are only asking more of us. So when I wrote Greensight, literally the first section of it is called Simplifying the Alphabet Soup, because there's so many pieces. There's no demand from your stakeholders. Why would you change? You'd observe. So we can make pledges. So we're going to make the changes to comply with that future. We need to transform. They were likely to be losing 10% of their customers in the next 2 years. There's at least 20% of customers at risk here. So the misconception is that this investment is something I'm not going to get return on. The return is really simple. My belief is that in 10 years' time, we're going to be in a world where these things are considered normal.
Welcome to the Sustainability Nugget podcast. I am Rarasu Maraibi.
And I'm Tosin Folorunsho.
On this podcast, we learn about sustainability by discussing various related topics while focusing on three pillars: the economy, the society, and the environment. Hello everyone, welcome back to the pod. Today we'll be discussing strategies to help businesses transition to net zero. And to help us with insight into this topic, we have our guest, Joanne Flinn. Joanne Flinn is an author and advisor who solves critical business problems for our clients. She integrates environment and sustainability into client organizations for business results. She's the chairperson of the ESG Institute and the author of Greensight, the sustainability guide for company directors. Hello, Joanne.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's wonderful.
Yeah, welcome to the pod. To start off, can you just take us through your journey from your early career to becoming a sustainability expert?
Okay. My journey is kind of a different one to many people. I did economics and law at university. I went and joined the corporate world. And I remember on my very first job talking about some of these sorts of topics. And my boss at the time just looking at me and going like, that's irrelevant for business. Okay, got the message. Don't talk about these topics. So progressed through the career. Ended up working at PricewaterhouseCoopers as the head of financial services consulting. I sat on the IT exco at one of the banks here out in Asia, and I've run my own business for a number of years. And you can see from that background, my work was very much around strategy, implementing strategy, the actual, once you've got the good idea, how do you actually make it live and put it into practice? And I did that all over the world, with quite often a financial services and a finance lens on what we were doing. And then 5 years ago, one of my clients asked the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, asked me to help them refresh their strategy. And about halfway through, the CEO said to me, Jacob Dewar said to me, he goes, Joanne, you understand an awful lot about sustainability and circularity for someone who's clearly got this, very left field strategy business background. Like how come? He goes, because you're doing better than our regular consultants, who are one of the very, very big names. So I won't mention their name. I had to think. What came back to me overnight was literally this. I've been channeling my father, which may sound a little bit strange in this, but as a child, we grew up all over the world. I'm Australian by birth, grew up in Canada. We moved to Nigeria, and then we moved to the Philippines. And my dad was an agricultural scientist, and he worked at one of the top scientific food research institutes in the world in a couple of these different places, at the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture in Ibadan in Nigeria, and then in Los Baños at the International Rice Research Institute. So for anybody who's listening and saying, that sounds like gobbledygook, these two places were part of what was called the Green Revolution. And my dad's job literally was to take great science, i.e. great knowledge, take it out to the most practical business people in the entire world, otherwise known as farmers, and see if it made a positive difference. Did it help the yields on the farm do better? Did it give them higher income? Did it improve the quality of life of the family and the farm? Did it work within the community? Was it acceptable in the community? Was it sustainable for the farm? Because as a farmer, you want to know that your farm is going to be able to produce food next season and the following season. So it's not just this quarter results. It's what are the next season's results going to be? And this is what my dad did. So he'd come home from his trips, and this is what we'd talk about over dinner. And he was a top scientist globally, and so he'd have some of the top minds in the world on the topic coming over for dinner. And as a kid, I just soaked it all up. And so I was in doing this piece of strategy, channeling what my dad had been talking about, feeling, frankly, I'll admit it, feeling like I was in over my head, but clearly doing well well enough. And so I realized that I had this body of knowledge from my childhood. I had these depths of experience from business. And I realized the world had changed from that early boss who had told me this isn't relevant in business, and that it was now, and we're now, thank God, in a place in business where these two worlds can now integrate. And so that's sort of where my sustainability depth started. And then since then, I've gone and went back to school, studied to go like, well, where's the world now? Where's the science now? Because clearly I had the science from, 30 years ago. Where's the science now? And that was great to be studying again. The downside was that what I found was that the worst piece was that the science hasn't changed. Mm. The data sets are bigger. We're further down a trajectory, but the fundamental science hasn't changed.
The science, really.
The science is the trajectory. And it was sort of one of those ones of either I was going to go and be totally depressed by it, which, psychologically a very real response, or I could just go like, okay, what was one of the other things I learned from my dad in those times and world was that, or I learned over years, and it was a few years after he died, I was at a conference that the International Rice Research Institute put on, and I was speaking with the Director General, and he made some comment, because obviously I was again channeling my dad in the conversation and the science that I knew and the principles that had come out. He made a comment about something. I said, look, I remember, and I won't even try and quote the exact name, but what he said to this very senior man when I was probably about 16 or so, over for dinner, had said to me, he said, Joanne, when we set up these institutes, we thought it was going to take 3 generations to solve the food problem. Mm. So those institutes were set up, in the 50s, so, a long time, 70 odd years ago. We thought it was going to take 3 generations to solve food. And he said, it took us 1. Wow. And I realized that, that to me sort of been my emotional anchor. Was going, that was such a huge challenge. I mean, when they started that, starvation was common. And starvation was common because we couldn't produce enough food globally. And now globally, we've got plenty of food. We might not get it to the right places, which is a different issue. But people don't starve because there isn't food on the planet anymore. Sure. And that took 1 generation. And so I look at it and I go, this generation, our generation today, it's possible to make absolutely amazing changes in the world in a generation. So I use that as my anchor for when things don't quite go the way that I'd love to go, okay, just because it's this moment, the generation, we can still do it.
Yeah, nice. It's really nice when talking about sustainability, but yeah, actually talking about the intersection between 2 fields, bringing the wealth of knowledge, in your case, from business, finance, and then implementing, because we really need, in sustainability, yes, we need the passion, but we need the knowledge from this different field. Where I bring from engineering, you bring from business. This is how we solve our problem. So you said you were in the corporate world, then you went into business, and of course you always had the sustainability background from your father. So did you now later on set up a separate business that included sustainability, or you just included it in your current economics and finance business?
At first it was pulling it together, pulling these things together in my head. And one of the gaps that I found as I was getting myself back up to date was there was a whole body of knowledge there, but there was nothing that was written for company directors, for really senior people who have that top responsibility. There was a lot written from the point of view of, as you said, an engineer in sustainability or a communicator in sustainability. If you're a company owner, what does this mean to you in the language and responsibility you have as a company owner? Or, if you're in a really big the C-suite and board, or if you're running your own business, what does it mean? Because this is directly linked to what you asked. So because I've written and published books before, I said, okay, how do I explain this? A friend who is a senior partner at Accenture asked me, he goes, you seem to have your head around it. He goes, write something for me, write 3,000 words for me to explain this to me. Why on earth do I care? So, it was hardcore business. He's really going what are we care? And I go oh, come on. Anyhow, so I took it as a challenge. I thought, okay, so how would I explain it to him in a way that would make sense to his business brain? What are the pieces his business brain needs to understand to go, this is why I need to pay attention to this and not just go and push it off somewhere else. I sat down and I wrote 3,000 words, which actually probably ended up more like 4. And then that got me going. And I ended up writing a book, which came out in 2022 called Greensight, the Sustainability Guide for Company Directors. which, if it's interesting, I can talk about one of the foundational insights we had in it, which has turned out to be really useful for business leaders in it. But what happened after the book came out was a number of people said, oh my God, this is so useful. Like, it makes business sense. Thank God, all my years of these two worlds finally coming together. And I was asked to set up the ESG Institute. So that was set up and launched in February the 14th, 2023. And its objective is to help businesses accelerate their transition to an under 1.5 degree world. We had the Senior Minister of State, Dr. Amy Kaur from Singapore, the Australian Deputy High Commissioner came, the Asia Stewardship Center, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, the Singapore Institute of Directors. So it's one of those ones where there was a lot of the great and good just going, yes, this is necessary. This is important. It's a whole new organization has come out of it, and all very much designed working with business leaders to help them take this vast complexity that is sustainability and environment, social and governance and say, how can we take this great big huge piece and make it understandable and structured in a business world so that we can recognize it, work with it and move forward faster.
Oh, nice. So from the book transitioned into the institute. So basically the institute is like implementing the frameworks in the book, right? If I'm right.
Yeah, framework in the book started it, and so that's the overall framework that we use at the ESG Institute. And then, as a result of the work that we've done with a group of leading companies, it's like one of those pieces where it was like, okay, what's the question to ask now? This makes sense. We've got this challenge, and then we sat back and we said, okay, question: what would a business look like? Is it even possible to design a business that would actually make sense for net zero? Like, what would a net zero business even look like? Like, okay, so we've got the target, but what would it look like? What would it even look like? Like, how would it operationally hold together? Because it's not like you just sort of go and stick a label on and go, we're now net zero. I don't know. Like, what would it even look like? If we were a true zero business, what's the difference between a net zero and a true zero business? Would there be, where would the important points be? Would it be identical and just in the engineering and product design? Would it be, like, where would the differences need to be and how it would hold together as a business? Would it change how you think about HR? Would it affect finance? Would it affect the way you procure? Would it affect your customers and your marketing? Would it affect your governance? Like how would the business really hold together? So we ended up identifying from the original framework in the book. Just a step back, then I'll come back into this. In the book, what we identified, we did a set of research, which is what underpinned this particular model in the book. So as I was writing it, I interviewed a number of executives and surveyed a large number of business leaders to get where they're at. Identified in the book was that if you look at businesses, and apologies everybody, this is a 2x2 matrix. You can take a girl out of consulting, but I don't feel like I've done my job unless I've simplified the world into a 2x2 matrix at least once. So this is a useful one. Because so the distinction that we pulled out on this one was that if you're a business leader, or you're running a division or anything, even in your own life, you can kind of use this one. You can kind of go, is there a need for me to change? As in, like, how I'm operating now, is it working fine, or do I need to change the way I operate in business? We call that changing our business model, because we see the world is going to change, and therefore we need to change to be ready for that future world. So, business, is there a demand for a business model change? And that could come from AI, it can come from sustainability, it could come from the fact that the social demand around you is changing. Just like, is there a cumulative demand that means my business, the way I need to deliver change, needs to change? We call that's sort of the horizontal across dimension, and then the vertical dimension is there a cumulative demand from our stakeholders? Because often people look at stakeholder demand and they look at it like individually, but you might have and then they go, but there's not a cumulative demand. There's not really a demand from our stakeholders. But I was going like, no. If there's a 1% demand from this stakeholder and a 2% demand from that one and a 2% demand from that, you can end up with 8 to 10% shift that could be really meaningful when you add it up. And if you ignore that, you'll kind of fall behind. So we ended up with this two by two. So in that one, we defined 4 different profiles. We've added a fifth, and I'll explain why. So the first one is going like, if there's no demand from your business model to change and there's no demand from your stakeholders, why would you change? Why would you do anything? You'd observe. Like, you just sit there and you go like, we're fine, we'll observe. Get on with things. We're just observing. And then there's one where you go, okay, well, I see our stakeholders want something from, we don't really need to change what we do. So we can make pledges. So this is where you can go and, you make pledges. Then you've got the one where you go, there's not massive demand from our stakeholders, but we can see the way the world's changing. So we do see a need to change our business model. So we're going to make the changes that allow us to comply with that future. So we're future ready, but it's a compliance game. And then there's the one where you go, okay, we can see a demand from our stakeholders. We can see a demand for our business model to change. Okay, so four different ways of playing. And I describe it that way because there's no judgment on any of them, but they do have different risk profiles.
Okay.
So, for example, right now depending on the industry you're in, you could find that there's significant amount of, if you say you're an observer now, and you might go like, I'm fine. But if you then look at it and you realize actually with the way, like there's been a whole series of regulatory changes in one part of the world that are affecting other parts of the world. And we've been working through with some of our clients, just working through will that change to their market access and how many customers they may have over 1, 3, 5, 7, 8 years because of these regulations. That market one is like, wait a second, you're an observer, fine. But given that change, you might be out of market by 10 or 20%. So you could be losing 20% of your revenue over the next 8 years and a good 10% over the next 3. So pretty, model it, get good numbers. So, as we were doing all that, we were going like, okay, so we have these, the observer, the pledger, the complier, the transformer. And so we're working with a group of leaders from 8 different companies. And we said, okay, well, back to that earlier question that you asked me, what would a net zero business even look like? Because we were going like, okay, so if we're going to be a net zero business, what would it need to look like so that we knew we're there? Do we even know? Is it even possible? Right? Like people talk about, okay, we need to be net zero. What does the animal look like?
Exactly. So and so like before we even go deep, I like to say like in like the sustainability world, or rather just in the world right now, like I feel like a lot of sustainability terms thrown around, and like the general public doesn't even know what that means. So
Fair
like
enough.
before we go like deep in like discussing, like I want us to clarify what actually is net zero, what's true zero, what's a regenerative business, like just bring flesh to that, and because we're going to be throwing that around a lot here.
Okay, so to take away all there's a vast body of like sub definitions on this one, and I love your question because so often the conversation is it's like as human beings, who talks about climate? None of us talk about climate. We do talk about the weather, right? And the reality is the weather is getting hotter and we're getting more storms, and so when the science world uses the phrase net zero, what they're talking about is as we put more carbon and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, it warms up. It just acts like a blanket. So it's like every year that we put a little bit more, and it's just like we put another little thin blanket on us, and then another little thin blanket. And each blanket in itself is just, it's thin. It's not huge. But when you have 10 years of little thin blankets adding up on you, it gets hot. And so the idea of the idea on net zero is that whatever we put into the atmosphere, we take out. So it's net, at additions, subtractions. So basically, if we put a little blanket on, we take one of the blankets off, so it pretty much stays the same. So that's the idea of the net zero. And the sort of pragmatic human piece on the net zero is what it would mean for us as human beings is we would be maintaining the kind of temperatures that we grew up with. So if you think about the temperatures we've had over the last sort of like 10 years, you think 10 years ago, it was just a little bit cooler. The weather was just a little bit less volatile. It was just a little bit more pleasant. It would be trying to maintain that kind of thing. Now, true zero is like taking it like the next level. So net zero is like if you binge, you exercise. So like, okay, so like for your health, you're still staying healthy because you're taking it in, you're putting it on, you're taking it off, but you go and have a big night out, and then the next day you go get super healthy. So, you're balancing, you're netting it off. So that's the idea of the net zero one. The true zero is saying, I'm just being healthy. Okay, so I'm not doing the binge and recover. I'm just going, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing the exercise, so I'm healthy. So it's just, so it's the idea of the true zero from a carbon science point of view is that we're not putting stuff in the atmosphere, so we're not having to take it out.
Is that even possible?
So here's the piece. Well, this is what one of the questions we were asking was like, and what would a business even look like? Could we even do? Could it even happen? Like, we're so used to all this stuff. Like, would it even be feasible, or is it just like pie in the sky stuff? And what we found when we looked into it, it was like, actually, it's amazing now. Now, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the answer may not have been the same. But when you look at it now, it's amazing how many different things there are substitutes for, and that are reasonable substitutes, and that are often equivalent on price substitutes. So it's first thing, is it even there? Can we get hold of it? Is it even affordable? And so each one's a different, like you're peeling the business questions. And so from a true zero point of view, it's amazing how much is possible. Is it 100% perfect there? Is every little subtle use case covered? Not yet, but a lot more than we realized. And it was only because we started looking at it and was like, actually, you know what? This is less crazy than we thought. The observer, the pledger, the complier, and then the definer. So the transformer. So we said that the complier was we defined as a net zero, because that's sort of what the global regulation, the global sort of standards that are like, that's the minimum viable product, to use the business language, right? That's the minimum sustainable is the net zero. So we said, okay, that's got to be the complier profile, because that's the comply to the future need, right? is that one. So that complier needs to be net, and then transformer needs to be true zero, because that's actually really transforming your business model. And to your question, is it even possible? Like, could we even see pathways that would go, actually, you know what? Quite a lot of businesses and industries actually, you know what, is it even possible? That we identified a fifth one. So as I said, the original model had 4, and then we identified a fifth. Because we're looking at it, we realized that if you were going to be looking to be a regenerative business, you needed a really different business model and design than you needed for a net zero or a true zero. Yeah. So for that one, we had a whole. So what we did was we had in the book, we had the framework of these pledger. Observer, pledger, complier, transformer. And then with the Institute, as we started working with businesses saying, okay, what would it look like? Is it even possible? How would you design your organization? Like, what would your architecture be? So you could say, this is what we need to do. This is what we expect in this department. This is what we need to expect there. This is how we all interact. This is how we link together. So it was like, so we ended up working through 106 different elements of a business. So, so it starts really breaking down into practical detail of, if I want to be a complier, this is what I need to be doing in HR. Here are the 7 things that are important for me in HR. But if I'm going to be a regenerative business, okay, and then here are the other 5 things that I'd also need to do, because there's more difference. So it's been a brilliant journey, because our first question was, is it to your question is like, what is it? Is it possible? What would it look like? Is it viable?
Exactly. Is it feasible?
Yeah. And is it possible not just in theory? Is it possible pragmatically? And what we've been finding is that it's far more than we realized. Like, I was working with a business leader. I give him full credit, because he'd come in and he said, "Look, I don't know anything about this. I keep hearing about it, and I want to understand enough to know what I don't know, at least to." So I give him a little credit, because that's a moment of courage, isn't it? When we go into an area and go, I don't know nothing. It's like going into school on the first day, isn't it? Feeling like an idiot. So due respect to the man on it. And so we took him through the process and the model. And it's when we do this with a business, it's sort of it's a two-day process to sort of help them get this. How does it work? What is the landscape? What's happening in the business, to be able to go, okay, I get now. This is where we are, and this is where we want to be, given what we now understand. It's not I say it because it's not a massively long process, because we've got so much structure. And by the end of it, he was going, okay, I get it. I understand the issue. I know I want my business to prosper. He was the owner. Because I want this business to be around for at least another 10 years. It goes, so I know I need to be at minimum a complier. If I want to keep getting customers and be on the supplier list, I need to be at minimum a complier. Okay, I'm looking at the complier one, and he literally like he stood back, and when we run it as a live workshop, we have it all up on the wall and post-its and going like, we're here, this is here, what we do. And he looked at it, and I went, gap, this is where we need to da. And he goes, you know what? We can do most of that in 2 years. I looked at him and I said, actually, the business from a business transformation expertise, yeah, you can do most of that in 2 years. A few things will take a little longer, but a lot of it you can do in 2 years, so it's doable.
Yeah.
And then the few areas where it will take a bit longer, that's cool. You're most of the way there.
I like that you gave this example because like that really because I was going to ask like what really is the motivation to choose where you stand in like the 5 categories because and like you said like he wants his business to still be here like 10 years and we still want customers. So now I'm just wondering the observers they don't just care or like their stakeholders are not demanding enough like for them not to be doing anything. What do you think? Like the businesses that are still just observers.
So once a year, we do what we call the Greensight survey. So we do it annually because the world keeps changing. So it's a way of just helping, tracking where it is. And at the moment, the reality is about 65% of businesses are in the observer pledger one. And given how many demands as a business leader people have, the truth is, I've been a business executive for a long time. Like we a filter, you got to cope with so much. So I think there's like in the observer category, I think there's a couple of different reasons. I think there's some people who just go like with technology. Some people go, I just don't want to have a part of it. Okay. There's a whole bunch of people who said the same with technology. Okay. And that's choice. We all have the right to choose. So, they just go, I don't want to have a part of it. Okay, fine. You want to have a part of it. Other people chose to get involved with technology. Their businesses had a different trajectory. So, that's, fair and square, I think part of it. Part of it, I think, has been just the overwhelm when people go, like to your earlier questions, like, what on earth does this mean? So, like, I didn't fully, you asked about the net zero, true zero, and regenerative. So, to people who are going like, Joanne, you didn't tell us what regenerative means. I realize I didn't close the loop on that one. Is like, so regenerative means, if you think about it, when you have like anyone who's ever had a garden, or, being a farmer and things like that, you plant things and it regrows. And that's the whole idea of regenerative is like, how do we move it? And so it's a different design life. So net zero was like, you just be healthy, so you're living a healthy lifestyle. Regenerative is saying, how do I get healthier? How do I regenerate the health I might have had? So like some of us will be going, I can certainly say this for the truth. Like I am not as I'm okay healthy for my age, but I'm not as healthy as I was 20 years ago. Yeah. How do I, so like as a regenerative one, the question is, how would I get as healthy as I was 20 years ago? Which I have to say is on my list of things to go do, because it would be lovely to have that health and that sense of vitality and fitness at my personal physical level. So that's what a regenerative business is. So from a planet point of view and a business point of view, it's how would we design ourselves to be operating in a way that would create a world that would be as healthy as we had, say, 20 years ago. On the regenerative side, you get these.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the net zero, true zero, regenerative. So, but like, what does a business that's net zero? And now I'm even going beyond net zero, because from where you're saying you guys have like the framework for net zero, for the true zero, and for the regenerative. So, what does a business that transitions into net zero or is trying to transition into true zero or regenerative, how does it look like? I want you to talk about it like maybe using like a case study of like a successful strategy implementation you've been involved with in like net zero. I don't know if you've done true zero, but like whatever you've done, like the net zero, true zero, regenerative. How does that look like?
Okay, so wonderful. I love these sorts of questions. So let me describe the process. I don't want to mention their name yet because because they're somewhere. I'm on those. So how it starts is in some ways like this where we are now is. It's like, okay, where two questions. It's like, where are we? Because you said like, why would people stay observers? It's because they go like, I've had too much on my plate. Okay, now let me have a look. Oh, what's in there? And so some people want to put it off because they go like, oh my God, I don't want to cope with it. Go away. Hopefully it will go away. The reality is sustainability is not going away. The physical demands of the world are only asking more of us. The demands of regulation are asking more of us. consumer demands, business demands of other business are asking more of us. The demands from employees are only going up. So the stakeholder demand is all just massively going up, and the world demand is changing. So the staying as an observer at one level, some people just go, I don't want to, and I'll take it how it falls. Others are waking up and going like, okay, I am an observer, but I don't want to stay an observer. So I'll give you a case study of somebody an organization that started off in the observer category and went, okay, I've been putting it off because it felt like too big and too daunting and not necessary right now. And that's sort of like when people, and this is the same thing I found when I did tech work in my earlier life. I did a lot of tech implementation. That's how people were feeling. They go like, I don't understand that technology stuff. Big men, I'm not going to cry. I'm just going to not be intimidated by it. And so it's funny watching it. There's a piece, and I go like, I get it because it's different. And this is why I feel really lucky because I grew up in sustainability. I don't find it overwhelming because, I had a parent who took me through it and it became normal. So I'm lucky, and I know that's not the truth for everybody. So it's a real privilege to help people go like, here's the pathway through that what seems like the crazy world. The case study. What we did, we started off with, and we said, okay, so where are you now? That's where we are is where we are. It's like where we start. It's like, where's your health checkup? Goody. When you go to the gym and they take you through to see, what you can and you can't do. And then it's like, well, where do you want to be? And so we put up the whole different roadmaps. So, this is what the different profiles, complier, transformer, definer, and then just describe what it would mean from a point of view of the business to be able to compete in the future. So then it's like for your business and your market, this is what it will mean. So with this particular one, they're an observer. We looked at it what they realized was that with their customers, they were likely to be losing 10% of their customers in the next 2 years. Okay. And then they realized they're likely to be losing another 10% pretty rapidly. Like you couldn't know exactly, but you're going like, there's at least 20% of customers at risk here. They're like, well, that's 20% of revenue. That's quite a lot. And then they're going, and then they're going like, okay, so that's one value point. And then we looked at it. We have a whole series of ones. So we did a whole bunch, the good old financially type thing, just go like, well, what will it really mean if we stay an observer? Because that's our cost of playing that game. Because people go, well, but Joanne, it's going to cost me money. And it's like, yeah, well, staying how we are is going to cost us anyway. Yeah. So, so that money is available for investment one way or the other. You do stuff and you it's like, when you realize that if you get a better chair, you don't have to go to the chiropractor. Mm-hmm. I'd be smarter to invest in a better chair rather than going to the chiropractor. It's that kind of thinking. And so, we do that just to go like, inaction is expensive right now. So let's go. And the numbers really added up. It was quite, losing 20% of your customer base, anyone who's playing along at home, listening in the podcast, just do the math. Just even do 10% because the maths are easy. Losing 10% of your revenue is expensive. It justifies a lot of investment. And so we just said, okay, that's what it is. And that's exactly why we don't want to stay the way we are. And then we said, okay, so given this, which of the three, the complier, the transformer, or the definer, which is going to be the right one to go for? And in looking at it, they said the complier is the safe one. Mm-hmm. But as a complier, they realized, and I found this true in over decades of business, when we play a compliance game, we stay in the market. It's a license to operate. We're investing to stay in the market. We're doing just enough. We don't tend to be investing to create new opportunities and new value. So we don't create profit on it. Yeah, we stay in the game, but we're not creating profit, and the additional services because we just go like, what's enough to stay in the game? That's what compliance is about, right? And so the penny drop for the executive team was literally that. They're looking at it, we're going like, complier is the safe game, but everyone's going to be playing complier, and once everyone's playing it, it's normal. We're not going to be able to get ahead on that one. If we invest to either go definer or transformer, then we're in a real place to start creating profit and moving ahead. Because as customers leave those observers and pledgers, we've got something that's really above and beyond just compliance for them to come to us and stay with us for a longer period. Mm-hmm. And so then the discussion was, which one of these two? So I'm literally taking us through like the steps that we work through. And so the executive team looked at it and they discussed it. And in their industry, they decided that actually going for a transformer model was the right one. I've got another client who's gone definer. That's okay. Different ones. So then once we said, okay, it's transformer, So then we went and did great big hotspots. So we're here. This is what the transformer would look like. Okay, gap, hotspot gap analysis type work. And then that became the roadmap to say, okay, this year one, these are the things that we need to get moved. Year two, this is what we need to get moved. Year three, this is what we need to get moved. Now we can communicate it as a simple transformation program into the organization with here's the goal. This is why we're doing it. If you see opportunities to accelerate something, go for it, because you'll only bring our bigger goal forward for us. And what we found is over the time that's been in operation, because we were really clear what the bigger goal was, there's been a whole stack of other innovation that's come up in the organization of people saying, hey, you know what? Now we know what that big goal is. You know what? We can do this one. Or hey, wait a sec. What about if we do this? Boom. And all of a sudden there's this extra step forward. It's been so exhilarating for the organization. And as you can see me talking about it, it's exhilarating watching it, because this thing that felt big and overwhelming has just progressively collapsed into being doable and energizing. And, as the wheels turn, it will be then into that place where they'll have enough together that they can go out to market and to be with their customers and say, this is our proof points. We're here on this one. So, in E, we're doing these things and we can demonstrate it. In S, we're doing these things and we can demonstrate. In G, in governance, we're doing these things and we can demonstrate it. So you can trust us. So when you're wanting to look at a new supplier for this particular product and services, we're ready for you, and you can be confident that we're delivering it and we're not just putting out vaporware promises. And so they're in such a strong position as they go forward, from a commercial point of view.
So interesting. I love this type of work. Currently, I do research, but there was a part, or while I was still in my PhD studies, I did an internship where I was doing consulting, creating roadmap for a company, and it was such an interesting job for me. So I know you create the roadmap, but do you guys stay with them to implement it?
So the way we work at the Institute is this one is we're not a consulting company. Okay. And I say that because how we work is with businesses is this way. We help them set the roadmap. We help them set the roadmap up and sort of the dynamics that I just discussed, so that it's got an ongoing thing. And as new science and new insight comes out, we look at it. We say, how would this tweak and adjust the roadmaps so that people can stay in at the best thing. So organizations keep us engaged because we keep updating the roadmap to keep it there. Mm-hmm. So we're there. We stay on as an advisor. And what we do is we certify other consultants in the structure and methods so that they can say, okay, we understand we understand the framework and the roadmaps. And then we have other organizations who do, the specific implementation work. So if there was because the reality is we want to help as many businesses as we can. And if we're a consulting organization, we are limited by the people that we have. Mm. Also, we want the capacity to be in your organization, not us putting a whole bunch of extra bodies on and you not knowing what's inside the black box, because that doesn't help you over time. It's like when you own it, your own people can be energized by it, and then it's your power. It's not somebody else's power. So it's very conscious on that one. And the third reason is in that 106 different things, there's all sorts of expertise. So sometimes you look at it and you go, you know what, we've got things we need to think through in our legals and the way we contract. Well, go get, here are people that we know that are great on the legal side who understand stuff. So there's people that we do a lot of referral work. So there's a lot of people. It's like, get the certification so that you understand the roadmap, so that we can refer people to you. So we've got law companies we refer to. We've got supply chain companies that we refer to. We've got business HR and coaching companies that we refer to. Because depending on where the gap is, there'll be a different group of experts that are more specific experts in that particular node who will go go rock for it. And that to me, because that to me is far closer to a transformer and regenerative business model as well, because we're trying to make sure we walk our talk as well, because nobody can be deep experts in everything. The human brain just doesn't work like that. So it's like we're deliberately creating an ecosystem so that together we can accelerate.
So do you currently work with countries across the globe, or you're specific in a geographic region?
So to work with countries, we do work with countries across the globe, because this is a global opportunity. Mm-hmm. You saw me catch myself there and going to say global problem. No, it's a global opportunity to really do things at a higher, better level. So when we work with organizations where it's not where we're physically today I'm in one part of the world and you're in another part of the world, and yay, we found time zones to work. Is we do it one of two ways. One, sometimes we can do it virtually, which, thank you, the world for making that possible. But quite often then what we do is we basically say, we'll be in this part of the world at this stage of the year. If you're interested in working with us, book your time in that window.
Okay.
And then, and then we have some people who go, you know what, actually, this is an excellent idea for us to go and have an executive retreat somewhere else in the world. And they go, okay, Joanne, we're going to, our executive workshop for this year is going, we want to get ourselves around this and really get moving. We're going to actually go and deliberately do an executive retreat. We want you guys to come in and do it. And then, the world's our oyster, and now anyone who's going like, Joanne, but that implies flights and carbon and everything else. Absolutely. And as we said, it's a progress to getting into true zero and to regenerative. And so we're very, very deliberate, and we track our own carbon impacts. And so anytime one areas where we have a hard time actually being true zero on is flying, because that is at the moment just the way that system is designed. And yes, we are very, very conscious and offset. So that is one where we've just gone like, from the way the world is, that's just how it is. But that's also was I described why we picked to be in different parts of the world. That way we kind of go like, we can do one flight and then be there for a couple of weeks and go, okay, we're doing like 5 different workshops, working with 5 organizations, like one each week. And then it's one big flight. And that's our way of designing our business to kind of be able to serve the world, but also serve the planet.
Efficiently using your carbons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're working with like different leaders, like across board, like business leaders. What is like the most common misconception you've seen with these leaders about transitioning to either net zero or true zero?
Oh, the most common one I find, well, actually, there's 2. If I can share 2. The first one is people going, it's too hard and it's too complex. Okay, and that as people go like, I go like, okay, look, any field that you're not familiar with feels hard and complex because it's the unknown, which is fine. But it's like, if you've not done finance, high finance is gobbledygook and sounds super complicated. If you've been working in finance for a number of years, it's simple. So the part, it's like the first one is just like, so one of the misconceptions is it's difficult and it's complex. Yes, there are parts into it, but it's like any area. Once you understand it, it's not so bad. It's just, that unknownness of it. So, I do distinguish between it's not intrinsically impossible to understand, and it is very doable. Yeah, the roadmaps were basically our way of testing and proving that, to basically go, okay. And so we find that the 5 different profiles and then the roadmaps do a lot to help business leaders go, okay, I can get it and I can see it. So that's one big misconception. The second one is this, there's a lot of misconception around, they say it's too costly, and so it's the financial one, which is why earlier on I was describing some of the financial assessments we do as part and parcel of the early process, because very pragmatically, people are going like, well, I'm investing in this, but I'm not getting the extra profit margin on this particular product. And the reality is, given the way the world's moving, is the question is, are you intending to stay in the market? I was working with I was moderating a panel conversation at a CFO conference about 6 weeks ago. And the discussion in the room ended up was like, well, it's really simple. If I'm not prepared to invest, I'm not going to be in the market. So my only choice is, am I prepared to invest to stay in the market, or I should just exit the market? Because the market is moving. So I say, and so the misconception is that this investment is something I'm not going to get return on. The return is really simple. You get to stay in the market. And that's valuable.
Yeah. So that actually got me thinking, you talked about forgotten the name, but it's like the opportunity cost, like what what you will lose if you don't do it, right?
Precisely.
Like based on like customer being lost and all. But what about like even like what you gain? So what I'm trying to say, like for example, like in energy efficiency, if I'm coming to a company and trying to like make them reduce their emissions, first thing I'm looking at like is their energy efficiency. Yes, do we invest to get like more efficient like boilers or whatever equipment, but like in the long run it's saving them more energy costs. So is that like part of things like you include in like the roadmap?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there are some things that often are super low hanging fruit. So exactly what you described. So
Yeah.
often people like they're going and looking into it, and they go. And so one of the ones is like, have you even done an energy efficiency audit with this sort of organization, like somebody who can really get some like really good granular data on it?
Mm-hmm.
Because the insights that, you know, and this is something where we literally back onto the partnering thing. We have partners who do it. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, okay, look, there's other organizations who've got great data sets on this one. Bang, you know, here we go. If you haven't done it, you know, here's some people we know. Go and look some other ones up. Go do an energy efficiency audit, because what we're often finding through, you know, the audits that we're seeing other people are doing and that we're having reported to us, there's often like something like about 30% of their current energy costs.
Mm-hmm.
And energy, I'd say cost deliberately to your investment question rather than energy usage, that are addressable currently. They're just like, it's like, yeah, get the audit, see the opportunity. And then you can often do it. Some organizations will do it on a savings share, so that there's no net additional cost to the organization. And then you've got that free cash available to go and invest in something else. And so like from a, you know, anybody who's playing along at home on the finance and business side is, you know, this kind of approach is super powerful. What you've just brought forward is, because when you go and do something like a good energy audit, and you find a 10% that you could access directly, that comes back as cash, because you've got
Mm-hmm.
a bit of implementation costs. So say that of the 20%, 10% is implementation costs and 10% is now available. You take that 10%, you say, I'm going to invest that. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
compound it back into my sustainability. Now I've got 10%. It hasn't cost me anything. It's free money.
Sure.
I'm going to put that into my sustainability. Like, where's the next place? Where's my next like low hanging fruity piece that I can harvest? And it's amazing how much of this compounding and recompounding is actually possible once one starts, you know, stepping out and looking big. Because you might go, okay, and it's not necessarily in an engineering spot, because you might go back onto your big roadmap. You might go, you know what, that 10%, let's go and put that into, in our organization, we think this would go like maybe in innovation. Or maybe this would be great into, we want to do something that is improving employee, you know, like, because across for ESG, there's a whole series of pieces, but this is exactly it. But it's only once you start unpacking it, you can step back and go, oh, actually, we're good here. Boy, we haven't done, oh yeah, it's true. We haven't done that for a while. We haven't done an energy audit. What other low hanging fruit pieces do we have? And there's usually a couple of other ones. You know, the goal is in the first assessment to kind of pick up 5 or 6 pieces across different parts of the business, that you can do exactly something practical, like the next step, like an energy audit, to go like, bang, bonus, free money. Don't you love free money?
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, so for any business leader or even startup leader watching this podcast now, what are some quick tips you can give, like for a company starting off their sustainability journey?
Okay, so some really quick tips. The first one is, whenever you start in this one, breathe in and relax. Okay, and truly, I say this with a certain amount of humor, but also because you are stepping into a place. If you're just starting in it, it's like alphabet soup of stuff. It's like going and picking up any new field. There's so many terms and things like that. So when I wrote Greensight, literally the first section of it is called Simplifying the Alphabet Soup, because there's so many pieces. You might find that getting hold of Greensight, which you can get on Amazon, so it's easy to get hold of. And it's spelled, the first word is Greensight is one word. So if you're doing the old Google research, it's an easy one. That can be a really way, because it's written in business language, to just go like, and it's very readable. I had an executive from one of the big building companies come back from a holiday on a beach, and he goes, you know what, I actually managed to read this on the beach. It was engaging. I'm going like, cool. As a way of starting just to get like a big picture. So, that would be, that's like a knowledge-based one. Secondly, if you are interested, you can go and do get a Greensight profile, which is available and I can, get you the links so it can be part of the podcast. So you can do a short assessment, completely confidential to your organization, just to work out which of these different profiles you're currently at. And it gives you some ideas of things you can do. So obviously, some people think they're at the beginning of the journey, and then when they do the profile, they realize they've actually already got quite a lot underway. I.e., like it's like if you go to the doctor and you go like, actually, you're healthier than you thought. Yes, you've got a couple of pieces that aren't quite as great, but don't overshadow the fact you've actually got quite a few things that are great. So, I do mention that because sometimes people feel that they're at the beginning, and that's because they're looking up the mountain, seeing people who are further on the journey, and not realizing that they've actually, made some good progress. So, that would be another one. And then that third one is that super practical thing, like, do something pragmatic, like, get a modern, really strong data-driven energy audit in. And so, that would be a pragmatic action. Another pragmatic action would be to go and look at your customers, and you go, how many of my customers are trading into Europe? Which for some of your listeners, that will be super relevant. For some of them, it won't be. So if they're trading directly into Europe, or they've got customers who are trading into Europe, because if you do have that, they have regulations in Europe that are going to make all this mean that if you're not a complier, you're out of market. And if you trade into Europe, or you trade into a major multinational, because they trade into Europe, they're all of those, what we're seeing is supplier lists and questions. If you're on RFPs, they're all beginning to ask, not just do you have a sustainability policy or something like that, they're actually beginning to ask for data. So you may as well go do a business, just like get your guys to go and work that out, so you can just have a sense of, okay, is this something that I need to go and put on my plans to go and really start getting my head around in the next quarter? Because there's actually, there's business risk. So that, and then the fifth one, you said a couple of them, I'm on a roll here. The fifth one, very much about people. Like, go and look at your people, have conversations with your people. If you do surveys with your people, get a sense from the human beings in your organization. Is this something that inspire, is sustainability and ESG and just doing things that are better for people and planet something that inspires them? Does it make a difference for them being engaged and interested at work? And there's lots of different ways of framing that, and so I won't spend time on that, because I think sometimes we don't track and measure the fact that if we've got something that energizes and delights and people, it increases people's feeling of value at work, that's a really, really meaningful thing. And as leaders, that when we don't actually recognize that, we devalue something that's hugely important for the human beings in our organization. Because that might be a huge place of just going like, actually, you know what? We worked with one organization, and they realized, as they worked it through, it was like, my God, that this is going to change the way we engage our people and the way that we hire, and really, for as a person, people's delight in the work that they're doing. And it's like, yeah, that's important. Day-to-day meaning is important. So that's another huge one. So that's 5 different ones.
Thank you. So, like, looking ahead 10 years, what's your vision for the role of sustainability in global business?
So if I'm going in 10 years out, so if you and I are sitting down having, a conversation, I'm sure we'll have other ones before 10 years, but said fast forwarding yourselves into 10 years and looking back and going, this is now the world. I think my belief is that in 10 years time, we're going to be in a world where these things are considered normal. That if I think like how quickly technology became embedded in our organizations, it just seemed a little bit over 10 years, it became pretty normal. And my forecast is a large number of these things are just going to be considered, this is just how we do business. This is just what a competent, respectful business does. And it's the new normal. And you and I will be discussing like, well, what's the advanced plays? And we'll be talking, what are the regenerative organizations doing and how are they thinking? And, that's going to be that's going to be the cutting edge.
It'll no longer be like arguing whether climate change is real or not. I guess maybe some people will still be arguing that. I don't know. But yeah.
Hey, look. I have family members who hate using smartphones.
Yeah.
It's just like they just don't want to use tech. Okay, cool, okay, but and therefore they engage in the world in that way. And there'll be some who go like, well, I don't want to do that. And it's like, okay, that's how you want to operate. That's like there's some people who don't want to be on the grid now anyway. And okay, and they operate and they have lives that are satisfying to them.
Yeah.
And there's some people who go like, I enjoy the life that's on the grid and the things that allows me to do. And therefore, and the grid, if it designed in a healthier, more effective way for the planet, winner for everybody.
So yeah, we've been talking about business leaders, but all of this would not be possible without like the professionals, like in different sectors, right? Like you talked about the roadmap and how
Mm-hmm.
like you even like refer different companies for like different aspects of like the roadmap. So what would be your advice to like young professionals actually wanting to make a career in corporate sustainability?
Wow, love that one. So my advice is twofold: is keep learning on the field, but deliberately pick up the business type topics. Like the one of the gaps at the moment is that a lot of people have expertise on one or the other, but they can't speak both languages.
Mm.
And if you can't, it's like I speak the English, the Australian, and the American. I'm linguistically challenged, and like you, how many different languages do you speak?
That's not a good question. I only speak English. For
Yeah,
me. That's not good. I meant to not speak my native language, but I don't. So nobody should come for me.
well, and it's the thing. It's like, and what I found is when people I might only speak English, but I speak finance, I speak business, I speak change management, I speak sustainability. I speak a whole bunch of different. I speak a whole bunch of different business languages and fields. Okay.
I speak engineering. I speak sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
chemistry. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you would have noticed that, and I speak economics. So like there's things in chemistry and engineering, they're different fields, right? And every now and again, but there's ideas we use this word here and that word there, and these ideas are actually the same, right? Or if I take that idea from that field, that idea from that field, I put them together, it's more powerful.
Sure.
Right. And so for younger people, I'm going deliberately be cross field, have depth in at least one, but deliberately be cross field, because this ability to synthesize and integrate is hugely powerful. And secondly, do things where you're going to be picking up some of this applied. What does it actually look like in real life? A lot of the work starts off doing it to learn, aka doing it for free, but it's learning. Like there's pieces where I still spend a significant amount of time learning, because the field keeps changing, the insights keep coming in, the principles stay the same. Like when I went back and I went, the science hasn't changed, the broad principles haven't changed, but the science hasn't changed. But the data sets, and there's nuances and other insights that come out, and social data sets do change. The physical world science doesn't change, and stay in it. And I mean, if you're interested in just sort of fast tracking some of the things at the Institute, ESG Institute, we run programs that integrate business and sustainability, so ESG, into sort of, which is why we created the roadmaps to just keeping it practical and cohesive. I mean, those might be interesting. But the good thing these days is so much more that's out there, including brilliant podcasts like this that are massive bodies of knowledge that you gain from, every time that you listen to one of these programs. There's always insight and depth in it.
Definitely. Thank you. That's like spot on. Interdisciplinary education right now is the future. If you stick to just one, then I feel like you're not going to move at the pace the world is moving. So yeah, that was definitely stop button. So thank you, Joanne, for taking the time to walk us through all of your strategies, learning all of this new, the definer, complier, transformer. That was just a new world that I just learned, and thank you for sharing with us. And I'll be leaving a link to where people can find your book, the Amazon link. in the show notes, and also the link you said about the Greensight, the assessment link.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll get that to
yeah.
you so you can have that in the show notes for people, because that's a very, very easy one. You can literally do it with a cup of coffee.
Mm. So yeah, everything
Yeah.
will be in the show notes. So yeah, to the audience, thank you for watching until the end. Please leave your comments if you have questions or any remarks. And until next time, continue to live consciously. And I'll see you in my next episode. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Sustainability Nuggets podcast. I am Rarsu Maribi.
And I am Tosin Folarunsho. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a rating and review on wherever you listen to your podcast.
You can also show your support by signing up for a small donation to help sustain future episodes. You can find all relevant links in the description. See you in our next episode.